Hello, friends, and welcome back to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the quasi-independent agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half-penny sales tax for transportation. We are broadcasting here out of the TPO's 2025 Transportation Industry Forum, which brings together different transportation agencies, organizations, and businesses in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. So when we've talked about transportation and mobility, 95% of the time, we're talking about transit, we're talking about bike ped, we're talking about roadways, but we don't often talk about two other modes of travel that are incredibly important, not only for getting around, but for our economy, and that's air and sea. So I'm thrilled today to have three guests to talk about the airport and the seaport. And those are, we'll start with actually the Chief Operation Officer, COO of Miami-Dade County, Jimmy Morales. Jimmy, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Okay, and then to his, what is that, your left or your right? I can't tell from here. We have the Director and CEO of PortMiami, Hydi Webb.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And then to your right, I got that right finally, we have the CEO and Director of Miami International Airport, actually all the airports in Miami-Dade County, Ralph Cutié. Welcome back, Ralph.
Javier, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And then this is your second time. I believe it's the first time for both of you.
Correct.
All right,
Absolutely.
so I'll take it easy on you. So you just came out of an incredible panel where you talked about the airport and seaport's critical role in Miami-Dade County in moving people to and from our community. Not just people, but obviously goods and services as well. But what I would like to focus on a little more is how the airport and seaport are connected to the county itself, both in terms of employees kind of getting to work, your two major employment centers, also visitors coming to and from. So, Chief, let's start with you, because you oversee both of these critical assets. How do you see the airport and seaport in that kind of larger transportation mobility context?
Well, as you know, Javier, I also, my portfolio includes
Yes,
transportation and public works, so which could be how we connect the two of them to some degree. Look, there's tremendous synergy between the two. As we pointed out, for example, during the program, I think it was 90% of the people who take cruises out of PortMiami fly in through MIA to get there. When it comes to cargo, the fact that they have, for example, recently started work on a joint project that is going to extend the life of some of the perishable products that come into both the port and MIA. From a transportation perspective, obviously, how quickly people can get maybe from the airport to the port and back after their cruise is a transportation challenge we're facing. Also because of the growth on the port itself, the number of employees there now, either because of headquarters of a cruise ship company or just coming to work every day at these, getting to or from work at the port or to the airport is also a challenge. And so we are trying to look at how do we perhaps facilitate that? Is that a DTPW type solution? Is it something else? But that aspect of transportation between our two major economic hubs is increasingly becoming important.
So Heidi, he mentioned the port. How many workers do you have there now?
So we have, depending on the day, right? Because if you have a cruise ship in port, you're going to have everyone working inside of the terminals as well. So we have a large volume of passengers and staff actually that come to the port each and every day. Our economic impact is $61 billion.
61 billion.
61 billion with a B, correct, and 340,000 jobs generated by the seaport. So the numbers keep on growing. When you talk about transportation to and from the port, there's really three ways of accessing the port, right? You have your port bridge, which if you're going to the downtown area is the way to go. You have the tunnel, which we'll get into a little bit later, but the tunnel has the direct access to the highway system, right? So if you're a passenger and you want to go to the airport, direct access to all the highway systems. And then the third way, which most people don't think about, is by rail, right? So if I'm a cargo container, I need to take that rail off of the port. So there's lots of volumes that come through the port every day, and those are really our three modes of transportation. And we're always looking to improve that because as we're growing, transportation does become a challenge. And I know the TPO is extensively looking at some connections specifically between the airport and seaport right now.
And there's a fourth way to get to the port,
What's
just
that?
by boat.
by boat.
You have some big ones.
Cruise and cargo boats, yeah,
Cruise and
it's a good
cargo.
one. I'm going to add that to my speech. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Ralph, same kind of question. How are you connected to the surrounding transportation network, and maybe what are some of your challenges there?
Sure. So we have on any given day about 37,000 employees that come to work at the airport on a daily basis. So factor that, add that to an average of 130 to 190,000 passengers daily, depending on the season. At any given day, we may have more than 200,000 plus people at the airport on a daily basis. So transportation is obviously very important to
May I
us.
ask you very quickly, what percentage of those visitors are staying in Miami or coming to and from Miami? As I know, it's a percentage of that is just kind of transferring through.
Right, right. The actual percentage, I think, is 60 plus. I can get you that number.
Oh, wow.
I don't know off the top of my head. But the point is that obviously transportation is important.
Yeah.
So we have a Metro Rail connection. We're very happy about that. The Orange Line connects Metro Rail to the airport. So we have users that use that to get to the airport. Both employees and sometimes passengers use that as well. Obviously, we have Uber and Lyft, and we have Metrobus. We have I think it's 14 to 18 bus routes that feed MIA to the rest of the community. So we also move not only passengers, but also employees especially.
Don't forget Tri-Rail.
And
Tri-Rail.
That's right.
Tri-Rail.
Yeah, and maybe one day Amtrak. We keep working on them.
Yeah, we're working on that. But all those feed to our MIC, the Miami Intermodal Center, and that's where they take. And then if they want to get into the airport, they take our Mia Mover train into the terminal, and then from there get to work or take their flight or whatever they're going to do. So it's critical having that transportation, and the fact that we're all under the Chiefs portfolio is big because we have that synergy with transit, us, the seaport, et cetera. So we couldn't operate without those connections.
And I heard the tail end of your discussion at the forum. You were talking about both the advantages and disadvantages of your locations and your size constraints. And so the advantage of the airport is that it's centrally located,
Correct.
right? And it's well kind of served by the surrounding transportation network. What are the disadvantages?
Well, the disadvantages are obvious that we're landlocked. We have 3,200 acres and change, and that's what we have to work with. And we can't really, we're bounded, on one side by the 836, 36th Street on the north side, and then 37th Avenue and Lejeune. So it's not like we have a lot of space. So at the end of the day, that is our biggest challenge, is growing with the volume of numbers we're seeing. We mentioned it in the previous presentation. We're looking at 77 million passengers by the year 2040 and 5 million tons of cargo. We're currently at 56 million and 3 million tons of cargo. Wow. So that growth projection is for real. And we need to be able to accommodate that within the very limited footprint that we have. I mentioned it in the presentation. DFW, one of our competitor airports in Dallas, they have 19,200 acres. That's a huge difference. So it's a double-edged sword. It is an advantage because from anywhere in Dade County, you can get to the airport relatively quickly, depending on the time of day when you come. But when it comes to growth, we have to be very, very creative when it comes to how we grow our terminals and expand our terminals.
Victim of your own success, as
Correct.
they say, right? Now, Hydi, unlike the airport, I don't believe the seaport is currently served certainly not by rapid transit. I don't know if any.
It's not.
Is there any
No
transit
public
connection?
transportation.
None
no
whatsoever.
public transportation on the port right now. Something of the future that is very much in our master planning, trying to figure out how to bring that component onto the seaport.
Do you think perhaps using that rail that you spoke of earlier is a possibility for passenger rail? Or is that just not viable because of the types of?
Probably not the best location, but definitely studying it as well. The concern or the interest when we bring public transportation onto the port is how do we distribute those to what is now 10 different cruise terminals and different landing stations that we can circulate throughout the port more efficiently. We have been expanding our MOT and our roads within the port itself. If you come out to the port today, you'll see a lot of those infrastructure improvements going on. You'll see flyovers that you typically don't see just to take you over a road to bring you back down to the next cruise terminal. So all of those types of improvements, including road infrastructure, is very important.
So, Chief, are any projects that DTPW is currently kind of looking at to better connect the county to these two facilities?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things we're looking at. One is actually DTPW and the TPO have both been looking at how could we bring rail to the port.
Passenger rail.
Passenger rail.
Cargo rail.
Excuse me. Passenger rail. You've got a potential connection to People Mover. You've got a potential connection to Metro Rail, because both do service downtown. They just aren't, and they're relatively close to the port. The problem is that solution would probably have to be then an elevated rail, which is very expensive. And so, we're looking at, are there alternative technologies? But a rail connection, in addition to probably creating a level of disruption in construction, is not an inexpensive solution. And as you know well, the funds aren't obvious to what would fund that, considering some of other needs. The other thing we're looking at a bit, and both DPW would help with, is the concept of an inland port. Because while the tunnel has been fantastic, and I don't think the growth at the port could have happened without it.
Or the growth of downtown.
Or the growth
to
of
some
downtown,
extent.
for sure. But the explosion in terms of cargo activity and whatnot, you have a lot of truck traffic that comes in. And if there was a way to make that truck traffic leave downtown, because instead of picking up their containers and at the port, they picked them up at some inland port where the containers were brought by rail, and so those trucks never even come downtown, that would alleviate at least some of the significant traffic issues on the port, make it a little easier for maybe passengers on the cruise ships and employees out there. So that's something that we are looking at as well. And the rail, in that case, the sort of freight rail connection that comes into the port, and the port is investing in more electrifying more, expanding that footprint. So that could help a lot. It's not an ultimate solution per se for passengers, but it might help at least with some of the congestion that's impacting the cargo business.
And I mentioned downtown because I was at the Downtown Development Authority at the time that the port tunnel was first conceived and built. And I have to tell you, that was transformative, not only from a transportation perspective or from the port perspective, but that is really what allowed downtown, that part of downtown that was being inundated with thousands of trucks every day, to turn that corner and start to build up. And that's essentially Miami World Center today. So just goes to show you that mobility land use connection is critically important.
If I could just address the tunnel, because you're right,
please.
the port would not be where we are today without that tunnel. That was a beautiful project for our entire community and for the whole entire state. It takes about 85% of the traffic off of our roads downtown. We would not be where we are with the cruise traffic or the cargo traffic. Yeah. So anything can go through the tunnel except for hazardous material. And the technology of that tunnel and the monitoring of that tunnel with the camera systems and the flooding systems, it's incredible.
And it's also modeled public-private partnerships, right?
Absolutely.
Probably one of the best ones, certainly in Miami, if not the entire state of Florida.
Agree.
Okay, so we need more of those.
We're looking at them.
Okay. So you each mentioned that you have a lot of, we'll call them rideshare, Uber, Lyft deliveries. This has transformed, obviously, transportation in general. Your two ports are probably the largest destinations for many of these trips. But I know they could also overwhelm your kind of transportation system within your facilities. What is it that you've done or are doing to kind of better manage the rideshare at the airport and the seaport? Ralph?
Sure. So we have our ride shares. They stage at our TNC lot, just about maybe not even half a mile east of the terminal proper. Not even that. So the rides will come in from there, and then we work very, very closely with our sheriff's office, and our landside operations staff works together with the Ubers to get them through. We do have periods of time when we have, the airlines function in banks. So flights come in not one at a time, 20, 30 flights at a time. So when those flights come in, during certain times of the day, the Ubers are very closely monitored by our staff to make sure that we get them through. We do have congestion sometimes when you have when you have 8,000, 9,000 people come in at one time, it can get backed up, especially when you only have one way in, up our upper drive in our departure level. But our staff does a good job working with our sheriff's office now. We are taking a look at what some other airports do. Some other airports stage. In other words, people get their Ubers away from the airport. They'll take a bus somewhere and then catch Uber from there. The issue we have with that is that surveys have shown that a lot of passengers, they just want to get off. Sure. They want to get off their flight, get on their Uber. They don't want to take another mode to get the Uber. So we have to work through that. But congestion is an issue because of what we mentioned before. The landlocked nature of our operation, there's not a lot of space to grow.
Would the MIC be a logical location for that, just because you already have that shuttle connection? Or?
Yeah, right now our TNC lot is not too far from the MIC. It's maybe a 2-minute drive from the MIC right now. But ultimately, we have 10 acres just east of the MIC, which we're looking at for multiple different uses, including potentially maybe TNC office space and even vertiports for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles.
We'll talk about vertiports in a second.
We're looking at that too. We're exploring different alternatives of how to improve that.
Okay. One interesting observation about the vehicle transportation is that given the competition between your traditional taxi cab and the on-demand services, right now for the traditional yellow cab, really the overwhelming percentage of their business is airport seaport. That really is, and so they've become that much more critical to that industry, which obviously creates a lot of jobs in our community. Historically, something regulated by the DTPW actually, and so there's a lot of work that's done with the industry to try to address their concerns, on a daily basis at both places, because pretty much elsewhere in the community, you don't have taxi stands anymore.
Right.
So that industry is very dependent on the business, and traffic staging issues as a result also impact them.
Yeah, so ground transportation at the seaport is extremely important, right? To get these passengers on and off our port as quickly as possible. Ubers and Lyfts play a large role in that process. So we have basically 2 large staging lots for Ubers and Lyfts. Our lots are not 24/7 similar to the airports. We are really functioning in the morning hours only. So we're looking at, as we are trying to densify our port, where can we put these flat lots that hold Ubers, Lyfts, and taxis? Do you put them in a garage and use that space and go vertical? So that's our next garage that we're building. It's actually taking the infrastructure and the lots where taxis and Ubers park and putting them inside the parking garage on the first and second levels of those parking garages, but utilizing that space a lot more efficiently.
Okay. So you open the door to eVTOLs or urban air mobility or whatever we want to call it, the Jetsons flying cars.
The Jetsons.
So I know that MIA, the county in general, has been a leader in that space. So what's the latest on that?
So, I mean, we've talked about this before. Under the chief's leadership, we have the Urban Air Mobility Task Force that was formed a couple of years ago. We meet on a quarter. As a matter of fact, we had our last meeting last week. And, I mean, it's an exciting technology. It is the wave of the future. It's going to happen. In my opinion, I think it's still a few years away from getting FAA approval. But the technology, they have to work out certain things as it relates to airports. Number one is concept of operations. How do these aircraft interact with our conventional aircraft? I mean, the max ceilings on these aircraft are 1,500 to 2,000 feet. Our aircraft traverse those thresholds both on takeoff and landing. So how those things how they operate with and interact with our aircraft, how are they going to be controlled? The air traffic control, the ATC for those vehicles, how's that going to be? Because the number one priority is safety. The last thing you want, especially after the tragedy that happened in D.C. with the Black Hawk helicopter and the American flight. I mean, it's something that has to really be proven, and the concept of operations has to be fleshed out before you get approval, number one, before you move human beings. I think you're going to see cargo moved before you see human beings move. But then you have the second item, which there's a zoning issue and a location issue as far as where do you put the vertiports. These things can't land on the street. They can't land in somebody's backyard. They need to land at a vertiport where they can charge. There's charging issues, proprietary technology, open sourcing, that kind of thing. And where do they go? And then if you're going to build a vertiport or retrofit an existing facility, that's extremely costly because you have to retrofit it to be able to withstand the loads that all those vehicles would have, when they're landed or parked or berthed up on the roof of somewhere where they're going to be charging. So you have to go through all those things. I think it will happen in the next, I don't know how many years. And we're trying to be prepared for it. So we've identified, we have several members of our team that are active on the task force, along with original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, that about 10 or 12 of them that participate in the group as well, that they keep us, kind of up to speed on what they're doing. We have consultants that we work with on our own and also with the state that has a consultant looking at this as well. So we're fully plugged into it, but there will be challenges moving it forward.
It sounds like one of the obvious routes is going to be from the airport to the seaport, just given that transportation and getting those cars off the road. So another kind of, I don't know if it's innovative technology at this point, because there have been ferries, throughout world history, but it would be innovative for Miami because we haven't historically had ferries. Chief, I know as the city manager of Miami Beach for many years, it's something that the beach has explored and continues to explore. But I'm wondering, I joked earlier that you can arrive to the port by boat. Is that a possibility? Maybe getting people to and from the port, maybe setting up a garage in downtown Miami or somewhere else and then ferrying them to the port. Is that something that you think should be explored or is being explored?
People have been talking about, water transportation for years in South Florida. And actually, when I was at the city of Miami Beach, we actually did a pilot program. The challenges are, number one, that the bay is very shallow.
Yeah.
So the larger kind of ferries that you see in San
Staten Island,
Francisco
yeah,
or Staten Island, would have limited, ability to traverse the bay. Number two, a lot of the areas you're going through, a lot of manatees.
Yeah.
So protected areas, again, challenging, particularly for a larger vehicle. So there are some unique challenges that maybe you don't have in deeper waters like you might have in those areas. Secondly, from a commuting cost, it's expensive. It's not a $2.25 ride, or if it is, then you're doing an even higher level of subsidy for that type of service. And it's a lot more weather challenged. Rough.
Sure.
With our tropical winds, it can sometimes not be a quick or unpleasant. So, and companies have tried it, but it just none have ever been able to achieve commercial success with it. I think Fort Lauderdale's had it for years, but because in intercoastal they stop at restaurants and things like that, we don't have that.
It's a tourist attraction,
right?
Yeah.
It's not quite the same. We don't have that same sort of infrastructure in place. So it's maybe one day, but no one's been able to do it successfully yet.
And if you're coming to the seaport by water, where are you starting from?
Good
Right?
point.
So are you
Yes.
starting on the beach from a hotel? What are those different pickup locations? You're not going to be coming from water from the airport. Right? So where's the volume of the passengers that are coming to the seaport, and where do you pick them up?
All good questions, which we will have answered at our next session because we are out of time for this segment of Mobility Matters. Chief, directors, thank you for being a guest on the program, and thank you for everything you do. True public servants and working hard to make our community a better
Same
place.
to you, my
pleasure.
friend. Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank
highlighting
you.
our industry.
Thank you much.
Anytime. So, folks, that's all the time we have here on this segment of Mobility Matters. We invite you to learn more about the CITT and perhaps watch some previous podcasts on our website, miamidade.gov/CITT. See you next time. And until then, keep moving, Miami.